What if the greatest signing in decades does not turn out to be the solution but the real problem? Is Ferrari in danger of losing another golden year, this time with Lewis Hamilton at the wheel? The internal hierarchy, the equipment orders, and the management of critical situations began to generate tensions. The result was another weekend away from privileged positions and with more questions than answers. Ferrari's big problem is not just the car. It is the narrative. For years, Maranello has been a factory of illusions that do not materialize. And with Hamilton, the expectation was taken to the extreme. It was not only about improving with respect to the past, it was about winning. Immediately. Because Lewis did not come to be part of a slow reconstruction. He arrived to add his name to Ferrari's legend. And if that synergy does not appear soon, internal pressure could turn this project into another tragic chapter of a team that has not won a championship since 2008. And that is where the central conflict of this story is built. Ferrari opted for the greatest legend of the hybrid era, trusting that his talent and experience would be enough to catalyze a change. But what did not calculate at all was the opposite, that the same weight of that signing can become a load. Because when the car does not respond, frustration is not only measured in times by return, it is measured in headlines, in rumors, in media pressure, and above all, in the eyes of a pilot who has known absolute success and does not tolerate mediocrity. This is the perfect storm. Ferrari, under crossfire of rivals such as McLaren and Mercedes, with Red Bull still looking for stability, and a Hamilton that is not willing to be part of a loser cycle. The conflict is already installed. And every race, each update, each word by radio, can incline the balance towards redemption, or to collapse. The urban circuit of Miami not only offered a visual show between yachts, skyscrapers, and celebrities. It was the point of emotional inflection for Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton in 2025. In a season that began to die from disenchantment, the American layout was the scene of a revelation, the crack between expectation and reality within the Italian team. The radio said everything. During the main race, Hamilton launched several messages that, although some described as sarcastic, were actually a cry of frustration disguised as irony. One of the most commented was his direct complaint for team orders, when Ferrari asked him to keep the position behind Leclerc at a critical moment, despite having pace to advance. This situation, far from being anecdotal, highlighted an internal uncoordination that seemed improper of a team with aspirations to the title. The most worrying was not only the content of the messages, but the subtext they revealed. Hamilton did not feel strategically supported, and the team seemed more concerned with avoiding public tensions than by maximizing results. In Lewis's body language, in the gestures in the paddock and later interviews, it was clear that it was being questioned whether the Maranello environment had the operational capacity to respond to the challenges of Formula One modern. And this is where many began to wonder if Hamilton had made a mistake when leaving Mercedes. Even so, in the midst of chaos, something unexpected happened, a connection glimpse. The third position that he achieved in the Miami race in Miami was not just a symbolic podium. It was the first time in the entire season that Hamilton seemed truly competitive with the SF25. He managed to manage the rhythm, minimize the degradation of tires, and execute a clean strategy. Although brief, that moment of synchrony served to change the internal narrative of the team. From that moment, Hamilton's speech softened visibly. He no longer talked about the car as a problem to solve, but as a challenge to optimize. Criticisms became analysis. The defensive attitude gave way to a more proactive position. In subsequent statements, he even acknowledged that the responsibility for low performance did not fall only on the team, but also in its adaptation process. He admitted that he had underestimated Mercedes' transition to Ferrari, both technical and human. In parallel, Ferrari's technical environment, led by Frédéric Vasseur, intensified his answer. Updates were accelerated for later, internal decision-making processes were adjusted, and above all, they tried to shield emotionally Hamilton from media noise. Because in Ferrari they know that Lewis, when he feels understood and backed, can be an unstoppable force. The feeling in the paddock after that weekend was clear. Something had been unlocked. It was not yet consistent results, but an emotional reconciliation between pilot and team. Rabies had given way to construction. Skepticism began to give in to the possibility of redemption. But a new urgency also emerged, to turn that change in attitude into tangible results. Because in Formula One, narratives can change quickly, but statistics do not forgive. And with McLaren leading in points and Mercedes stalking in each race, the margin for errors narrowed dangerously. Imola, the route that winds between Italian hills, is not simply one more race in the calendar. It is, for Ferrari, much more than a circuit. It is a sanctuary. Any mistake made here is not erased, and any victory has the weight of an epic. In this sacred context, Ferrari presents this weekend with the pressure of centuries of history on his shoulders, and with Lewis Hamilton in the center of the stage. Enzo E. Dino Ferrari Autodrome demands technical and emotional perfection. Its combination of rapid curves, braking in descent and blind areas not only test the chassis, but also the balance between trust and aggressiveness in the pilot. It is a place where mechanical limitations are exposed without anesthesia. And for Ferrari, it is the territory where they cannot afford to fail, not in front of the Tifosi, not with Hamilton in the seat, not after the mediocre results in Australia, China and Japan. The updates that Ferrari introduces this weekend are not a simple aerodynamic evolution. They are an urgent restructuring. Sources close to the team have indicated that it is a new flat background package, modifications in the front suspension and settings in the diffuser, aimed at improving stability in high-speed sections and reducing the sensitivity of the car to lateral wind changes. The SF25 has suffered especially under conditions of low aerodynamic load, with a nervous rear axle and little traction in the curve outlet. If these elements are not corrected now, the season can become a succession of symptoms without cure. But beyond the technique, there is the intangible. Imola will be the true thermometer of the relationship between Hamilton and Ferrari. It is in this circuit where we will see if the conciliatory tone shown in Miami was the beginning of a new stage or simply a respite before an even greater storm. Because if the car does not respond to the promised modifications, the narrative will turn again violently. And this time, the emotional blow could be irreversible. Hamilton knows what is at stake. In his recent words, there is no resignation, but a surgical clarity. He acknowledges that his adaptation is in process, that the car is not yet to measure, but has also begun to speak with property about the SF25, as someone who already understands it, who studies it, who wants to transform it. Imola represents, then, his first serious attempt to lead that transformation from within, as a pilot and as a figure. Within the team, the atmosphere is of maximum concentration. The data collected during the simulations indicate that if the technical package works as expected, Ferrari could be able to dispute the top three of the grille, at least in classification. But engineers warn that everything will depend on how the track evolves and if they manage to maximize the setup in the first 3 free sessions. There is no room for improvisations. Everything has been adjusted to the millimeter. In terms of championship, Ferrari arrives at this race with an overwhelming deficit with respect to McLaren and Mercedes. In builders, those of Maranello are more than 50 points in the second place, and in pilots, Hamilton has not even addressed 2 digits consistently. Imola is not only a career, it is a sentence. If they do not get a blunt result, the team could redirect their efforts at 2026 before the summer stop. That would mean by dead a season before half of the calendar arrives. And in this scenario of maximum tension, with the local fans overturned in each curve, there is only one certainty: Ferrari cannot hide. The roar of the engines in Imola will not only measure the speed of SF25, it will measure the soul of a project that for now remains a promise. This time, Ferrari has nowhere to escape. Imola is not just one more race, it is the most brutal mirror where all unresolved errors are reflected, all unfulfilled promises and all the illusions sown since the signing of Lewis Hamilton was announced. The Scuderia faces something much harder than competition. He faces herself. Because at this point of the season, speeches is no longer enough. Optimistic communications or measures press conferences are not enough. What Ferrari needs and what Hamilton demands is that the project begin to translate into results. Real, forceful results which return to the fans the faith, the team the direction, and to the pilot the conviction that he chose well. That his legacy will not stain with a mediocre season dressed in red. The Tifosi do not expect miracles. They expect struggle. They expect a competitive car, a firm strategy, a driving without concessions. They expect Hamilton not only to drive but inspire. That leads. That becomes the symbol of the rebirth that they were so promised. But if Ferrari fails here in Imola, where Enzo Ferrari built part of the myth, the consequences will be deep. The speech of "we are still learning" will cease to be tolerable. The looks will go to Vasseur, to the coaching staff, and yes, also to Hamilton. Because in Ferrari, when the car does not respond, nobody is saved. No matter how many championships you have in your pocket. It doesn't matter if your name is Lewis Hamilton. And you, who have followed this video until the end, hold to think, what really does this moment mean to Hamilton? Are you writing the most epic chapter of your career? Or are you building the prologue of a bitter withdrawal? Can Ferrari be saved from within by a pilot who has won everything outside? We are at a breakdown. And if something has demonstrated the history of Formula One, it is that the most legendary moments are not born of calm. They are born from the crisis. They are born when everyone finishes you and you choose to respond with speed, with passion, and with courage.